Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. Today we're looking at AI
Okay.
and how it's shaping the stock market, especially with this crazy bull market we've been seeing with the S&P 500. It's up a huge 28% this year alone.
Wow.
To put that into perspective, that's more than double the average annual return since the 1950s. We found this really cool article from the Motley Fool that digs into all this. And to help us break it all down, we've got our market expert back with us.
Glad to be back. And yeah, it's definitely been a wild ride in the markets this year.
Okay, so before we get into AI's role,
hmm
I think we need to understand what's driving this massive surge in the S&P 500. Can you give us some insights on that?
Sure. The S&P 500 is what's called a market cap weighted index. That means the companies with the largest market capitalization have the biggest sway on the index's movements. You can think of it like a popularity contest, where the companies with the biggest market cap get the most votes. So when a giant like Apple or Microsoft has a good day, it gives the whole index a boost.
That makes sense. So this year's performance is probably because some of these big companies are having a really good year. And speaking of good years, the article talks about Nvidia. Their stock price has surged by an insane 187%.
Yeah, that's incredible.
That puts its valuation at a whopping $3.3 trillion. What's behind this meteoric rise?
Well, NVIDIA's success is tied very closely to the whole AI boom. Their graphics processing units, or GPUs as they're called, are the real workhorses behind AI development. They provide all the computing power needed to train those really complex AI models, and the demand for that technology is absolutely exploding right now.
So they're in the right place at the right time.
Yeah, you could say that. But on top of that, NVIDIA has also been really smart. They've built this whole software ecosystem around their GPUs, so it's easier for developers to build and deploy AI applications. And that's given them a major advantage over their competition and basically made them the go-to supplier for AI infrastructure.
So it's not just about the hardware. It's about building a whole environment that caters to AI development.
Yeah, exactly.
That's really interesting. Nvidia is not the only one playing in the AI field.
Yeah.
What about these other big tech companies like Meta and Amazon? They've also seen some pretty big gains this year.
Oh, for sure. You can't talk about AI without bringing them up. Meta, with its Llama AI, is pushing the limits of these large language models. I mean, these models can actually understand and generate human-like text, and that opens up crazy possibilities for things like chatbots, content creation, even scientific research. And then you've got Amazon. They're using their cloud platform, AWS, to offer tons of AI services to businesses, everything from image recognition and machine learning to natural language processing.
Oh, right. And don't forget about Microsoft with their Copilot, integrating AI into their whole Office suite, and Alphabet with its Gemini project,
You hear
which is developing even more advanced language models.
Yeah, it seems like every major tech company is going all in on AI, and it's definitely paying off in the stock market.
It really is. The potential for AI is so huge, it feels like no company wants to be left behind.
Exactly. It's like an arms race to see who can develop the most sophisticated AI tech and applications. And it's that competition that's driving all this innovation
Yeah.
and pushing the whole field forward.
At an insane pace. It's
Yeah.
kind of mind-blowing to think about the impact all this is having on the market and just on the world in general. For someone who might be a little intimidated by picking individual stocks, is there an easier way to get in on this AI boom? The article mentioned this thing called the Roundhill Generative AI and Technology ETF.
Oh, that's a perfect question. ETFs, or exchange-traded funds, are basically a way to invest in a group of stocks that track a specific sector or theme. The Roundhill Generative AI and Technology ETF is designed to specifically give you exposure to the AI sector. What's really interesting is that it's super accessible. You can start investing with just $40.
So it's like a low-stakes way to test the waters.
Yeah, exactly.
What exactly does this ETF invest in? Is it just a bunch of big tech companies like Nvidia?
It's actually more diverse than you might think. It holds 48 different stocks, covering companies involved in AI platforms, infrastructure, and software. It's a way to get a little piece of the whole AI pie.
So it's not all just Nvidia.
No, definitely not. Nvidia is its top holding at 7.28%. But the ETF also includes companies like Microsoft Alphabet Class A Meta Platforms and Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing, all in the top 5.
Okay, so you're not putting all your eggs in one basket. But the article did say that those top 5 holdings make up 26.4% of the portfolio. That seems pretty concentrated.
It is, and that's something important to think about. The ETF is weighted heavily towards these industry leaders, so their performance will really impact the ETF's overall returns. If they do well, the ETF will probably do well. But if they struggle, the ETF could take a hit.
So it's kind of high risk, high reward situation.
Right.
But if Goldman Sachs is saying AI will be a $7 trillion industry by 2032, maybe it's worth the gamble.
That's the question a lot of investors are asking themselves right now. The potential of AI is huge, but it's still a fairly new and volatile sector. It's important to understand both the rewards and the risks before you jump in.
So we've got this ETF that tracks the AI sector, and it's heavily weighted toward those major players who are all seeing this crazy growth. But how has this ETF actually performed? Has it beat the market?
It has, actually, and quite convincingly. Since it launched in May 2023, the ETF has delivered a 57% return, outperforming the S&P 500 over the same period. And it's kept up that strong performance this year with a return of almost 29%.
Wow, those are some really impressive numbers. But the article mentioned an expense ratio of 0.75%. Can you explain what that means for investors?
Sure. The expense ratio is basically an annual fee charged by the ETF provider to cover its operating costs. Think of it as the cost of managing the fund. It's 0.75% of your investment, and it's taken out of the fund's assets. Now, that is higher than some broad market ETFs, but it's in line with what you'd expect for a specialized sector fund like this one.
So you're paying a bit more for that specialized expertise of the fund managers,
Yeah.
like choosing a specialist over a general practitioner. Now, the article pointed out Morgan Stanley's prediction that Microsoft, Alphabet, Amazon, and Meta are going to spend a combined $300 billion on AI infrastructure in 2025.
Wow.
That is a crazy amount of money. What kind of impact did that have on the AI sector, and specifically on this ETF?
That's a really great question, and it highlights the huge growth potential of this whole AI industry. That level of investment from these tech giants shows how confident they are in the future of AI, and that spending is going to trickle down to lots of other companies in the AI ecosystem. Chip suppliers like Nvidia and AMD, software developers, companies building AI applications. It could create a really positive environment for the Roundhill ETF, since lots of its holdings will likely benefit from this increased spending.
So it seems like the future is bright for AI, and for investors who are in the right position to capture this growth. But before we jump into all the implications of this AI investment wave, let's take a quick pause.
Sounds good.
We'll be back in a jiffy to keep going with our deep dive. Welcome back, everyone. Before the break, we were talking about all those massive investments that are coming up for AI infrastructure. That $300 billion number really shows how quickly this sector is growing.
It does, yeah. And what's really cool is that this growth isn't just limited to those big tech companies. It's branching out and affecting industries way beyond software and hardware.
I'm curious about that ripple effect. We've mentioned some uses like self-driving cars and healthcare, but what other areas do you think AI will really disrupt?
One that comes to mind is finance. AI is already being used for things like algorithmic trading fraud detection and personalized financial advice. We're even seeing the rise of these robo-advisors that can handle portfolios, assess risk, and make investment suggestions based on individual goals.
So AI could totally change how we manage our money. That's kind of exciting, but also a little scary.
There's always some uncertainty with any new tech that shakes things up, but the potential benefits are huge. Imagine AI tools that could help us budget better, avoid financial messes, and make smarter investment choices.
That does sound promising.
Yeah.
But let's go back to investing for a sec. We've been discussing the Roundhill ETF as a way to get involved in the AI boom. But like with any investment, there are risks. What are some of the downsides investors should know about with this specific ETF?
That's a really important question. As we said earlier, the ETF is very concentrated in a small number of big companies. So its performance is tied to how well those companies do. If one of them were to have a major problem, it would drag down the entire ETF's value.
So diversification or lack of it is something to really think about here.
Exactly. Another thing to remember is how volatile the AI sector is. It's constantly changing. And the leaders today could easily be replaced by new innovators tomorrow. That uncertainty makes the sector prone to big swings up and down.
So it's not a set it and forget it kind of investment.
Right.
Investors need to stay updated on the companies in the ETF, the overall AI landscape, and be ready for some bumps along the road.
For sure. And it's always so important to do your own research before you make any investment choices. Don't just rely on one article or source. Look at different viewpoints. Consider your own risk tolerance. And only invest what you can afford to lose.
That's solid advice. So we've looked at the potential of AI in different industries. We dove into the details of this ETF and talked about some key risks. But I want to shift gears for a bit and talk about the bigger picture. We've all seen those movies where AI gets super smart and takes over the world. Is that something we should be worried about?
That's a question that's been on people's minds for ages. But we got to separate Hollywood from reality. While AI has come a long way, It's nowhere near having human-level consciousness or self-awareness.
So we're not about to have a robot uprising.
Not exactly. The focus now is on creating narrow AI, systems designed to do specific things. These systems might be amazing at things like playing chess or recognizing faces, but they don't have the general intelligence and adaptability of humans.
That makes me feel a bit better. But even if we're not facing a Terminator situation, there are still real concerns about how AI will affect society. What are some ethical things we need to be thinking about as AI becomes more common?
That's such an important question, and it needs way more attention than it usually gets. One of the biggest worries is bias. AI systems are trained on huge amounts of data, and if that data reflects existing biases in society, the AI will continue and maybe even worsen those biases.
So like if an AI is used to make hiring decisions, and the training data has biases against certain groups, the AI could unintentionally discriminate against those groups.
Exactly. That's why we have to be careful about the data used to train AI systems and create ways to spot and reduce bias. Another concern is how AI might affect jobs.
Right, the whole robots taking our jobs fear.
Yeah. While some jobs will definitely be automated, AI can also create new jobs and improve existing ones. The key is to make sure there's a smooth transition and that workers have the skills to succeed in an economy driven by AI.
So it's about adapting and always learning new things.
Exactly. And this is where education and retraining programs are super important. We need to prepare people for the jobs of the future, jobs that will need different skills, and a better understanding of how to work with AI.
It feels like we're about to see a huge shift in society, one that will make us rethink not just our jobs, but our education systems and social safety nets as well.
It's a big challenge, but we can't ignore it. The decisions we make about AI today will have long-lasting effects for future generations.
That's a great point. Well, on that note, let's take another quick break to let all these big ideas sink in. We'll be right back to wrap up our deep dive into AI and its impact on the world. Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We've been exploring this crazy world of AI, from its effect on the stock market to how it could totally change whole industries. And you know, one thing that's really hit me during this conversation is how much AI is already part of our lives, even if we don't always notice it.
It's true. AI is often working in the background, powering things like recommendations we see online, or the spam filters that keep our inboxes clean. But as AI gets more advanced, it's going to be even more present in our lives.
And that brings up so many questions, not just about the technology itself, but about how it'll affect society, our jobs, what it even means to be human in a time of intelligent machines.
Absolutely. One of the most important things we can do right now is to just talk openly and honestly about these complicated issues. We need to move past all the hype and the fear.
And really look at all the sides of what AI means for our future.
I completely agree. So as we wrap up this deep dive, I'm interested to hear your thoughts on what steps we can take, both as individuals and together, to make sure AI is developed and used responsibly.
That's a great question. I think one of the most important things is to really boost AI literacy. We need to help people understand what AI is, how it works, and what it can't do. This means giving people access to education and resources that explain the technology in a way that makes sense and gives them the knowledge to have real discussions about its implications. So it's about helping people become critical thinkers, not just people who passively use AI technology.
Exactly. We also need to encourage diversity and inclusion. In the field of AI development itself, the people creating these systems should reflect the diversity of the people they're meant to serve. This will help reduce the risk of bias and make sure AI solutions are created with a wider range of viewpoints and needs in mind.
That makes a lot of sense. A more diverse AI workforce would mean more inclusive and fair outcomes for everyone.
Absolutely. And finally, I think we need to set clear ethical guidelines and regulations for how AI systems are developed and used. This means governments, industry leaders, and researchers working together to ensure that AI is used for good and not for bad.
That's a huge task. But it's super important if we want AI to benefit everyone.
It is, and it's a conversation we need to start having right now before these technologies become so ingrained in our life that it's hard to change direction.
I agree. That's a really powerful thought for our listeners. The future of AI isn't set in stone. It's something we're actively shaping with every decision we make.
Exactly. So let's make good choices. Let's learn from each other and work together to build an AI-powered future that's both innovative and fair.
That's a fantastic way to wrap things up. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of AI. We hope you found it interesting and made you think. And like always, we encourage you to keep exploring, learning, and asking questions. Until next time, dive deep.